Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Egan and I'm here for Lawn Fawn. In today's video, I'm going to make a Ta-Da diorama card using the new heart add-on. I'm going to start off by stamping and coloring in the images that I'm going to use for the front of my Ta-Da diorama card, and that stamp set is All My Heart. So I have that sweet little mouse that has that heart balloon I thought was super adorable, and I'm going to be stamping it on Express It cardstock. It is just a very smooth and slick cardstock, great for using with alcohol markers. I place the cardstock in my MISTI stamping tool and I'm going to ink up the images with the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, which is really great for using with the alcohol markers. I'm stamping the sweet little mouse and then also those two other groupings of hearts. I will be using my Copic markers to color in the image today, and I'm going to go with a brown mouse and a bright pink heart. The colors I'm using for my mouse is E44, E43, and E42. I'm going to add the darkest area or the shadow to the right-hand side of the mouse and then blend it out with the remaining colors so that my lightest color is on the left-hand side. I'm using R01 and R02 for the ears and the belly, and a little bit of that R02 for the nose. For my balloon, I decided to try and get a little bit more dimensional with my balloon. There was an example I saw on Instagram, so that is what I'm trying to replicate to give it like a couple shiny spots in that heart shape. And the colors I'm using for this is RV29, RV14, and RV13. I also used a little bit of RV10 for the brightest area of that shine spot, but I really didn't like how the RV10 was looking, so I went back over those areas a little bit more with the RV14 and RV13. And I'm going to use those same colors and kind of that same format of coloring for those shiny spots for these smaller ones. It's a little trickier, but I did manage to get it a little bit on some of those hearts. Then once I have everything colored in, I'm going to take the coordinating dies, line them up over my images, and hold them down with a low tack tape and run those through my die cut machine. I'm going to reuse the remaining piece of that cardstock to die cut out some extra pieces using those coordinating dies. Express It cardstock is not super thick, so I really like to add some stability behind my images. And I like to just do that with my liquid glue and my tweezers, and I can kind of pinch it together to get it to line up correctly. Next, I'm going to work on foiling my sentiment, and I will be using I think it's the Happy Valentine's Day foiled sentiments. So I grabbed my glimmer machine, I turned it on in the back, so I'm going to let that warm up while I work on my cardstock and my foil. And now everybody does their foiling different. This is how I like to do it. It's worked really well for me. I have one of the hot foil sentiments there, and I have Ballet Slippers cardstock. So I place it onto the cardstock so I can stretch out my glimmer foil to get an idea about how big I need my piece to be. So then what I'll do is I take that glimmer hot foil, which is, I don't remember the name of it, but it's just a really nice bright pink. I'm going to place that down on my cardstock so it's the pretty side up. Then I take the foil plate and place it so it's the foil plate side down. So you're seeing the back of the foil plate. Then I'm going to trim off any of that excess foil. And I'm going to take some of the best ever craft tape and I'm going to hold it in place, which is another reason why I trim off all that excess foil. I want my tape to touch the foil plate, the foil, and the cardstock. So it's going to hold that down in place for me. My green light turned on for my glimmer system, which means it's ready to go. So I'm going to take my cardstock and foil plate and I'm going to flip it so that the hot foil plate is touching my glimmer system. Then I can place my top plate and my shim over the top and hit the timer button. Now I did speed this up in the video, but it's going to stay a solid green when it's ready, and then I can disengage that from the system. I'm going to bring in my Platinum 6 machine and run that through just that piece. I don't need any other plates. Run that through my system, and then it's going to have foiled my background. So I always kind of flip that over onto my work surface, and I can carefully peel away the tape. So now that I reveal this, it foiled it beautifully on this colored cardstock. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. All that beautiful pink shine is going to be great for Valentine's Day. Then I'll take that heart window from the Ta-Da diorama and I'm going to die cut this out. Now I didn't line it up quite perfectly, so it didn't come out as good as I had hoped, but my sentiment is in there and I still have a beautiful foil design. I'm going to work on decorating the doors of my Ta-Da diorama, the pieces that pull out. And for that, I'm using a brick stencil. And then there is this piece. So this is the piece that's going to create the two doors. So I trimmed down some cardstock so it's just a little bit bigger than what I'm going to need. And the reason I did that is just so I'm not ink blending a ton more extra than I really need. So I'm taking my cardstock, I put a little bit of Post-it tape behind it to secure it to my work surface. And then I have the brick stencil that I'm going to place over the top and hold that down with some Post-it tape as well. I'm going to start off with a bubblegum ink. It's a really nice bright pink that I'm going to ink blend onto my background with my blending brush. Now, one thing I really love about using a brick stencil is it does not have to be perfectly covered. I can have splotchy areas in it, and I think that just kind of gives it a little more interest to that background. Now, my corner was starting to pop up a little bit, so I brought in some washi tape to hold those sides down. So I'm going to finish going through with the bubblegum ink, and then I'm going to come in with plastic flamingo. So I think it's really fun to add another color in here, especially this bright I can't say flamingo, plastic flamingo. So that piece is done. I can pick this up, remove this, and I'm going to repeat those same steps with the other panel. Once again, putting that Post-it tape on the back to just hold that down in place. And with the brick stencil, it's really easy for me to line up the line of the brick stencil with the line of my cardstock. Now here again, I started out with that bubblegum ink and then came into some of the areas with that plastic flamingo. And this, I don't necessarily go over the entire background. It's just little areas here and there. I'm going to take my blending brush and go over the background a little bit with the remaining ink I have on there. If I need to bring in some more, I'm going to bring in bubblegum because it's not quite as bright as plastic flamingo. You could also have started with Ballet Slippers cardstock if you don't want to have those stark white lines in the background. I'm using some white paint that I'm just placing onto my work surface with a small paintbrush. And I have a couple drops of water there so I can mix it up and make that white paint just a little bit more fluid and flick that over both of my panels. I didn't do it on these, but I think adding some gold paint to these would be really pretty as well. After I added all of my flicks, I'm going to take these and set them off on the side to dry, and then I can work on creating my Ta-Da diorama. So this is the main piece you're going to need. You're going to need two of these, and I die cut them out of white wood grain cardstock. One of them, I'm going to take that heart window, and I'm going to center it as best as I can between the top and bottom and also the right and left edges. Once in place, I'll hold that down with that Post-it tape and run that through the die cut machine to cut out my heart window. I'm also going to die cut out two of these strips. So I'm going to set these off on the side and then I'm going to bring in my brick backgrounds. Now this one, I'm going to be die cutting out these panels. You can see by the die, there's going to be two skinnier areas and one larger one. And that's important to kind of keep in mind because my score lines get a little bit lost with such a patterned background like that. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I continue to work on the card. I'm going to take those score lines and I'm going to fold them over onto themselves, kind of reinforce that fold a little bit. And I'm going to do that same step for my other panel. Now my Ta-Da diorama is going to be a little bit different because I'm not going to be adding anything to these sides. So I'm not going to be using that piece for my project today. So after I fold those lines, I'm going to get that larger panel kind of right next to each other because that's how my cards are going to open or my window is going to open. Now for these two white strips, I'm folding along those score lines to create a tab at the top and the bottom. Before I start any of my assembly, I'm going to take my foiled sentiment. I added tape runner to the back and I'm adding this to the back panel. So I had these two white panels die cut earlier. One was I left plain, the other one I die cut out the window from. So I'm using that window as a guide to help me line up my heart. And then I just kind of move it out of the way and I can place my heart down. So this is going to be in the background. I can always bring my window, my front one back in to check it, make sure that that heart lines up pretty good. And with the tape runner I used, I have a little bit of wiggle room. So until I'm ready, then I'll go ahead and push that down to secure it in place. For the window panels, I am adding tape runner to the right-hand side of it, which for this is going to be the skinnier part. So we have that larger area that's going to be our doors to open up, and then that skinnier area that we folded. And that's going to be the area that gets lined up onto our background. So I place that right up to the edge and kind of in between those score lines, and then just butted up my other piece right next to it. So here we have our windows that are going to open up and show that foiled sentiment in the background. Now I can take my window panel and I'm going to flip it over, and then we have these long skinny strips that I folded the tabs on earlier. I'm adding tape runner to each of those tabs, and these are going to go behind our panels. So this is where our doors or our windows are going to slide into. So I folded those pieces over, and there is a notch that is created. I'm going to line that notch up on that strip with the notch that is already created in my window. So now I can flip this over, and then I can take my other panel, and we are going to slide those doors or those windows, not really sure what to call it since I turned them into brick, but we're going to slide those into those slots that we just created. So I can get the one side in, I slide it all the way over, and then I can flip that and put my other one in. Now I did feel a little kind of awkward doing it. My one panel got stuck under my adhesive. So you want to make sure you're just sliding it into that slot area. And then you pull, and here we have where it's a brick that opens up. Pink bricks are seriously the cutest thing ever. Now I can add my images. So for this, I wanted the mouse to be overlapping the heart a little bit. So I want to make sure I'm not adding adhesive to that part that's going to overlap that heart window. I'm adding some thin foam squares to the right-hand side of the mouse. So see, he's going to kind of overhang there, which is another good reason to kind of back your images with an extra piece of cardstock, because the balloon isn't flimsy. It's actually pretty sturdy with that extra cardstock there. I'll come in with a white gel pen and add some highlights into my mouse. And you could also add some glitter to the hearts. I think would be really cute if you'd rather do that instead of the highlights. And that's going to finish it off. I didn't do any other sentiment to the front because my sentiment is in the inside. So I love how I can open this up and it's going to reveal that Happy Valentine's Day foiled sentiment in the background. And there is something just super sweet about pink bricks and white wood grain cardstock. Very simple, but super cute. I hope you enjoyed today's card project. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.